Hi guys, my name's Conor. I'm a science fiction, political, and philosophy nerd, a Marine Corps and law enforcement veteran, a never Trump Republican, and a fan of the alternative media and online politics. Recently, I've had a conversation with other creators in reference to a doxing war that's ongoing. Effectively, what's going on is one of the top 5 political streamers in the world, named Stephen Bennell, aka Destiny, he's a liberal creator. He's been engaged in an information war and a reputation war with his rivals within the political space, but also with his critics in the drama space. And so they've been doxing. For the completely uninitiated, doxing is where you find private and I think, like, definitionally, it's supposed to be public information, but you find somebody's name, address, telephone number, etc., and you publish it to the internet. Now, that in and of itself is not a crime. Taking publicly available information and then publishing it is not a crime. However, what that invites is for people to use that publicly available information, including addresses and phone numbers, and then to begin harassing the person, to either harass their employers, harass them through mails or letters, harass them through text messages or phone calls and voicemails, harass their friends or family if you get their publicly available information and then you post that to the internet in the same thread. And so as a result, what's happened is Stephen Bennell and his orbit and his friends have all suffered some degree of harassment. And there's an argument about like whether or not he deserves the harassment based off of his like personal behavior. And then there's also he's doing the same thing back to some of his critics. And his critics are arguing like, hey, we didn't engage in this bad behavior, therefore why are we being punished in this way? And that's what we're going to break down today. So I hope you stick around. I hope you enjoy my drawings in Microsoft Paint. But that's what we're going to be doing for the next little bit, is discussing informational and reputational warfare within the Twitch and YouTube political and drama space. Just checking in with chat before we roll into the content, looking for my last comment. Oh, I guess I didn't highlight one. Okay, that's interesting. So everybody's getting grossed out about me describing various corpses. That's good. That's good. I saw a homeless man who got eaten by turkey vultures and his hips looked like brisket. So, get the help that should help you get back in the mood for food. Elder Millennial says the streamer space is full of man babies who clearly have never touched grass. Well, that's part of where I'm landing, where it's like, whenever I zoom out and I think about what's actually happening, I'm like, you guys are fucking idiots and nobody gives a shit about this. But clearly plenty of people do give a shit about this, or else we wouldn't even have a live stream. But let's go ahead and break this down. So information warfare and I would say reputational warfare are probably different things, right? And so information warfare, I would argue, and this is all off the cuff, so if you guys have extra things to add, go ahead and type it in chat. I'll add it as appropriate. But for info warfare, let's go ahead and add this here, click this, move that over there, make it look pretty. Let's put it down to 22 for the size. Information warfare. So what you're doing within Twitch and YouTube politics, there are ideological rivals and enemies. And I would say, like, if you have opposed ideologies, you are enemies. If you have competing ideologies, you're rivals. That's the way that I would do it. If you have competing ideologies, you are rivals. And the way that I would differentiate this is like Republicans and Democrats shouldn't be enemies. They should be rivals. And what I mean by that is Democrats should be arguing for the way to, we should both believe in a republic. We should both believe that the population of the United States of America is entitled to some level of freedom, dignity, wealth, love, all the virtues that we think are good about human life. Like, human beings should be enjoying those virtues and maybe some vices to greater and lesser degrees. And what we should be arguing is like, to what degree is each virtue and vice needed in order to create like a healthy, happy, flourishing human life? And to what degree is it the responsibility of the government in order to enable that thriving? And that's where Democrats and Republicans should be rivals, not enemies, because we have the same project. We just might have different objectives within that project. Whereas Fascists are completely opposed to the concept of the Republic of the United States, and communists and socialists are completely opposed to the nature of the way that the United States currently operates. And so I would put fascists and communists as enemies of the United States. I would make Democrats and Republicans who actually believe in the ideological precepts of these philosophies, I would put them as rivals. So rivals will engage in information warfare, but it shouldn't be as harsh as enemies. As a matter of fact, I'll put that down as a difference. So rivals and enemies participate in information warfare, but it should be different. Enemies, rivals want to surpass, enemies want to destroy. And I think this is one of the arguments from Stephen, and this is all relative to Stephen in the current doxing war, is that Stephen believes that Hassan, Piker, Bad Empanada, J-Stock, Queeman, and I guess Doobie, which is weird to me. And I borderline want to put a question mark there. And Doobie are not rivals, but are actually enemies who seek his destruction. Either they want Stephen to they want Stephen to quit political commentary or to commit suicide. I mean, I honestly, like I think if I ask Queeman on the day, he might be like, no, I don't really care. I just want to make money. I just love the content, blah, 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 blah. But realistically, I was like, okay, but would you enjoy it if Steven committed suicide? I think he'd probably be like, yeah, probably. And I think the same thing with J-Stock. Otherwise, their hyperbole, the way that they talk about him doesn't match. The way they talk about the man, they kind of want him to kill. They want him to kill himself, or they want his career destroyed. One or the other, right? So information warfare involves putting out information, or research. I should say researching involves researching and publishing information that damages the goals of your rivals / enemies. I would say that's information warfare. And the way that we're going to separate that out from reputational warfare, even if they're parallel projects, reputational warfare, I would say that while parallel with rivals and enemies distinctions, the goal isn't to defeat the ideology, but to defeat the individual. And so finding and publishing the worst aspects of your target, goal is to make them so toxic and unattractive to potential friends and work associates that they are socially isolated and incapable of achieving personal / professional goals. I think that's actually the difference. So information warfare is more about defeating the ideology, and then reputational warfare is more about defeating the individual. I think that's accurate. So what Stephen is arguing, I'm going to go ahead and save this as info versus reputation warfare. What Stephen is arguing, this is where we're actually going to get into the tactics, in my opinion. So let's go ahead and get this tactics / dynamics of info / reputation warfare. So this is Stephen's argument, and we should probably start, maybe we should do the info warfare, okay? Because that's actually going to be in reference to the chorus drama, and then that's going to be relevant to what we're talking about later today versus the reputation war. And some of this might not even be like conscious. A lot of this might actually be unconscious. So what I would say is, in reference to shift, Let's start with the info dynamic first. I think in reference to the info dynamic, it would be around ideology. So we would have liberalism permits Stephen's bad behavior. It would be liberals are corrupt by excusing Stephen's excesses. It would be liberals are shills for the military industrial complex. Liberals enforce an unjust status quo. Liberals are permitting the genocide in Gaza. Liberals are, I don't know, rich sex freaks who don't care about the working class. This is what I would say is generally the vibe of like the anti-Stephen / anti-center left sentiment, right? But when it comes to reputation, or when it comes to information warfare, excuse me. When it comes to Stephen fighting back, because let's face it, he's majority fighting leftists right now. What's so interesting about this is like an extension of the leftist liberal civil war. So it'd be leftists have insane, impractical ideas. Many of those ideas are violent and murderous, excuses terrorism and extrajudicial murder, like Luigi Mangione. What else would it be? Leftists excuse authoritarian rivals and enemies to the United States. And then there's nothing wrong with liberals financially backing liberals to spread liberal messages. I think that's an okay breakdown of the information warfare segment of it, where it's ideological more than personal. And so that's where you can make it personal by using Stephen as a lightning rod for how the ideology permits what's going on right now. But realistically, this is like the war between liberals and leftists in the informational warfare perspective. When it comes to the reputational stuff, it's I'm going to write this down, and I'm going to write it down prescriptively. So Stephen is a sociopathic, manipulative, lying. I'm just going to write PDF because that's how they describe him. Let's be real. Even if his critics, let's say Nicholas Diorio, or let's say that J-Stock, or let's say Queeman, or let's say that Doobie. And Doobie, by the way, is like the most charitable, the most steel manny as far as the people that I've engaged with. Let's say they're like, oh, well, Stephen isn't actually this thing because of XYZ ABC legalistic shit. However, he's so bad behaved that I don't care if people label him this thing. That's where they're effectively encouraging the audience in order to attack him using that invective, that insult. Stephen is a sociopathic, manipulative, lying PDF. Stephen is so reckless / evil that he has hurt himself and those he is surrounded with. Any harassment he suffers is justified due to his bad behavior. Friends / family should distance themselves to save themselves. And then Stephen should have no professional associations based on his bad behavior. That's effectively the argument. They use infinitely more colorful and rude language to get at this, but this is what they're poking at. This is what they're trying to get done. is they're trying to castigate him. And I think Steven's sociopathic. When it comes to manipulation, I think he can be Machiavellian. I think that's demonstrable. Whether or not he's lied in the past, like, yeah, he's lied about some things. Let's say in reference to like personal issues related to his relationships. I think he, people can credibly accuse him of lying. And then with the PDF stuff, I feel like that's an invective that even his opponents are using as a weapon to destroy him, not because they actually believe that he's out there molesting kids. Although I guess some people think that he is, so I don't know. Anyways, with Steven's counter argument, though, Steven's counter argument is, in my opinion, this is my opinion. This is not Steven saying this. This is me saying this. Steven's personality is necessary to survive in this caustic, toxic environment. Caustic just means, I think it just means that it like erodes you slowly over time. Steven is not evil, although he can be reckless. Steven is not trying to hurt his friend's family. It's just an accident of the circumstances. And then what I would say too is that his perspective is the punishment doesn't correlate with the alleged bad behavior, in that enemies are punishing friends. Well, I would say Steven, family, friends in such gross ways that retribution is just. That's Steven's perspective. And I really only went into like this isn't even tactics and dynamics. This is like, I don't know. This is just like a further articulation of information warfare, of what's going on. Info/reputational warfare. So I'll put info over here. And I'll put reputation over here. Rep. And I'm going to check in with chat because we've already done our first two drawings of the day. Save as JPEG, info/rep, warfare, I guess this is dynamics, Steven. All right, cool. Then we'll do another new one, and I'll get into that momentarily. But Flint says, the problem is that no one can change their preference in that way. It's likely somehow you are born with that. Not that lolicon PDF behavior should be normalized, but it's not that easy. Okay, but Flint, so let's say that I was sociopathic or psychopathic, right? And I knew that I wanted to, or I had like more than average homicidal impulses. And so as a result, there's two ways that I can go about my above average homicidal impulses. I can temper them by becoming a disciplined individual who looks out for my bad homicidal impulses and tries to control them. And then I try to engage in healthy violent behavior like combat sports or jujitsu or football or baseball or any kind of like competitive thing that allows me to give a healthy outlet to my bad impulses. Or I could start staring at drawings of people being endlessly murdered, and I could draw drawings myself of like torture scenarios. And then I could just like constantly obsess about the violence that I want to enact in the world, but cannot do because of like legal prohibition. Obviously, in my opinion, the first path where you play combat sports and you work out and you, do Brazilian jiu-jitsu and all that kind of bullshit, that's infinitely more preferable as like a pro-social behavior than obsessing about like the bad criminal shit that you could be doing if allowed to do so. And if you stared at those two people the guy who has sociopathic homicidal impulses, but he uses those impulses in order to drive him in healthy, social, productive ways, versus the person who maybe they don't participate in the homicidal behaviors because they just like to draw the homicidal behaviors as an outlet for their homicidal impulses. But if you saw them constantly obsessing, then clearly one is more like psychologically and physically healthy than the other ones. And this is where I really don't like Stephen's argumentation in reference to like where his moral judgment lies, because he'll look at the person who's working out, doing combat sports, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, playing baseball, and all that kind of stuff. And he's like, well, that's actually, that's okay. That's good. That's great for that person. But then he'll look at the obsessive person who's in their like basement drawing like, BTK torture scenes on paper. And he's like, well, it's a piece of paper. Who are they really hurting? And the obvious answer within this analogy, which I wish I had brought up during the debate or the stream to be clear. I wish I'd thought of this at the time, but obviously there's a preference here. There's a healthy, righteous, virtuous way of conducting yourselves, and then there's a way where the harm isn't necessarily articulable, but it's clearly bad for the individual. I hope that you guys see that. Otherwise, I'm going to have to start drawing stick figures of the people with homicidal impulses and the people who are drawing out, like people who are working out and people. I don't think I need to draw that. I hope you guys are smart enough to understand. Playwright says, well, there goes my appetite right before lunch break. Don't be a pussy. It's all right. Seashell Hunter says, first responder life. Yeah. Yep. Death Lily says, thanks to Twitter. I see at least one person get murdered every 2 weeks. Yeah, I see the clips of people getting smoked, and I will skip it. Just Carpet 563 with 5 gifted memberships. What a fucking king. Thank you, Just Carpet 563. And Deus Halcyon with 5 gifted memberships. Seriously, thank you. You guys are fucking kings. Prudus says, I don't want anything to do with anyone who calls themselves a gore enjoyer. No thanks. Well, Prudus, that's actually kind of my point, is that like I like violence. I like action movies. I like aliens. I like all that kind of stuff. However, oftentimes there's like a virtue or vice meta commentary on top of the violence that offers some kind of redeemable aspect or commentary on human nature. That's interesting to contemplate. Whereas if somebody is there exclusively for gross, grisly violence, then yeah, I think you can look at that person and be like, yeah, they're kind of fucked up. Fast and Bulba says it calms me down, not upsets me. Ooh. Joshua Inglis says, what's the best way to support your stream? Joined your Patreon yesterday, but noticed the last part was a while back, so just wanted to check if that's the preferred place. Well, Joshua Inglis, thank you for joining, by the way. I did see the membership. The Patreon is nice because then I get to draw out, like the Patreon isn't huge, but basically, on the first, I can withdraw a healthy chunk of cash and pay a bill with it. So your support there is great. Now, if you have money burning a hole in your pocket, Monday through Friday, I am live 9:30 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. I'm live on Counterpoints Politics on Tuesdays because this is like this is my safe space. This is where I get to hang out with my community and my chat. Any money that you donate today, any memberships that you give, any super chats that you give, they come to me, okay? Whereas if you go through Valor Media Network is paying me a small salary. So if you contribute there, effectively what you're doing is you're paying them back for giving me a small salary. But I need some people to donate over there in order to justify my continued existence as a full-time creator. So really, it's up to you. Elder Millennial says, that's why I think a majority of EMS recruits dip out. The stuff they see is insane. Yeah. Yep. You have to have like a really hardcore temperament in order to constantly see people physically jacked up on their way out and then just brush it off and go get food. And what's really interesting too is like some people got skeeved out or grossed out by my descriptions of dead or dying people. But the truth is that like what happens when you're there, at least for me, is you're so thankful to be alive and in good health that you're like, at least I did this whenever I dealt with somebody passing. I would go get a big, beautiful meal afterwards. And the reason why I would do that is because I was effectively thanking the galaxy and the universe and God for being in good health, for having the ability to have a good meal, and for almost like giving me the honor of helping me, or yeah, like allowing me to have the strength to help this person into the hereafter. Because some of these people were passing, some of these people had passed, and so effectively, I was trying to pay some kind of like, I don't know, sacred payment to the universe of gratitude of having a good meal and just appreciating how cool life really is. Randy says, I dated an EMT for a few months. Every time I complained about my day, she would give me this look and say, yeah, life is hard. True. Grassroots says, I'm vaguely in the neighborhood of a time. Oh, thanks, Grassroots. Good to see you, brother. Random Edit says, do you think anything you said about food shops at Destiny will get through to him? He's going to continue to support her as long as she sweeps for him. Yeah, that's actually what we're going to get into, is how he's using her as a weapon. Mud Farmer says, good morning, gentlemen, and my lefty queen in absentia, LB. True. DJ says, can you explain the discrepancy for disavowing food shops but giving a pass for Vosh? I don't think I ever gave a pass for Vosh. I think I actually just said that I wasn't going to make content about it himself. We could do that. Albul Trakovich says he gets a pass because being a lolicon is the biggest nothing burger of all time. Conor even said, keep it to yourself on Destiny's video, and that's the correct response. I mean, it's not nothing, but obviously on the scale of sins, we could compare it to like murder or rape, and we could be like, is it better to be a rapist, like a forcible rapist and murderer, or is it better to be a lolicon? Obviously, it's better to be a lolicon. Is being a lolicon good? No. And you should stop doing it. Top Thumper says, morning chunky points, MS Paint today. You're not going to be man boobs Ross. Did your parents call you a happy little accident? Woo! That's spicy. Oh, that is rude. I don't have that bad of moobs, bro. I don't have that bad of moobs. My moobs are very small. Oh, that is rude. Albel says, just want him to say it out loud because he's an optics maxer, lol. Yeah. So yeah, I want Steven to acknowledge that lolicon is bad, and I want him to acknowledge that he's doing a fucked up thing in order to fuck with people who are doing fucked up things, or he thinks are doing fucked up things. That's actually what we're going to get into next. Death Lily says, the fact that we don't have better private data laws for citizens sucks. Sure. Razzle Smasher says, good morning, chat. Good morning, Connor. Good morning, chat. Good to see you, Razzle. Thanks for hanging out. Webtoon Enjoyer says, that's true. What actually happened to LB? She balanced Connor's bad takes. I don't agree, but that's okay. LB, I think she was always having the progressive far left take, and then I was always engaging with it and getting one guide, and then I stopped doing that for a few days, and I think she got bored. Or I said something fucked up and she just didn't want to forgive me. Tomato Brew says, someone get this guy a drawing tablet. Ooh, that would be fun. Short says, ew, corpses. I'm going to listen to a classy, non-gross or controversial streamer like Food Shops. Nice. All right, I'm going to read like one or two more, then we'll get back into it. Melody says, since Destiny has labeled Doobie as one of the characters that has been harassing him, did you ask for the evidence so we can write Doobie off now? No. Steven hasn't provided that evidence, which I think is... I think that's actually where our substantive disagreement lies. And so this is where we need to actually draw out what bad behaviors are engaged in and what characters are engaged in what bad behavior that's provable. And by the way, this is J-Stock and Queeman's point. They can fucking endlessly bitch and moan that I'm not like running away screaming from Steven, because clearly that's their goal. Their goal is to get Steven socially and professionally isolated so that his career is dead or he commits suicide, right? That seems like the goal. However, there's a whole bunch of bad behaviors that can be engaged in information and reputation warfare, and I don't think that it's provable that Queeman and J-Stock are participating in them. So I'm going to go ahead and put down here, this is, maybe I should color code it. I think I'm going to color code it. So green, nobody should care about this because we all do it. Talking shit on the internet. We're all entitled to this. This is our God-given birthright as Americans. We're free to talk shit about our government, talk shit about our friends, talk shit about our enemies, talk shit about our rivals. we are free to do this, and nobody should give a fuck about talking shit on the internet, right? Then I would say talking shit on the internet, and then I would say the next one is making critical content of rivals and enemies. We do this all the time. Everybody does this. Steven does this. I do this. Queeman does this. JStock does this. Everybody does this. This should not be like, if this is Discord and comment sections talking shit on the internet, making critical content of rivals and enemies. The only reason why this is higher up in the tier, in my opinion, is because what would I say? Shit, higher up in the tier is because it can have more of an effect. Because you talking shit in a comment section, yeah, sure, the creator might see it, but they can ignore you. Whereas if you're making critical content, hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, or even millions of people can see your critical content, agree with your criticisms, and then in turn start talking shit on the internet about said character. It's not illegal. I don't even think it's immoral. I don't think it's bad. I think it's good, actually. So I would say that's the who gives a shit about that, right? Then I would say the next step is invective. You can't see that, so I'll use kind of the yellow-orange one. Invective slash A-logging. And so what I would say, invective commentary. And I know that's like a fancy word. I'm going to Google invective real quick and make sure that I'm using it correctly. Let's Google invective real quick. Excuse me. And thank you. I do see that other people have donated. I promise I will get to you. I know that chat is popping off. Invective says insulting, abusive, or highly critical language. I would say that JStock and Queeman are engaged in invective, but so do I. And so does Steven. And so does every drama and political creator. So the reason why I would say that this is like a step up, where it's like a yellow flag, is because invective commentary and A-logging, you're effectively saying, like, this guy is bad and should be, not only is this guy bad, not only is he doing bad things, he's a fucking piece of shit, asshole, douchebag, and he deserves all these bad things in life, right? And that kind of turns up the temperature a little bit. Invective commentary slash A-logging. And then what I would say A-logging is where you start documenting every bad thing that that person has ever done. And what I'm actually going to do here, because I actually see the next steps, is I'm going to remove A-logging from this tier, because I do think that invective commentary, A-logging is worse. And so I don't think that I should make them the same thing. So A-logging, which I'm going to Google to make sure that I'm using the proper definition. Where is it? Here we go. Sorry. Being precise requires a certain amount of researching. A-logging is the activity or business of felling trees and cutting and preparing timber. That is not what we're looking for. Urban Dictionary, because this is a relatively new term. Logging, when you do massive, oh, that's not it. A-logging, the term used to describe when expressing disproportionate levels of hatred for someone, often including wishing them physical harm. That's not how I would use it. I thought logging was like logging, like you enter something into a log. There isn't a single A-logging definition on Urban Dictionary, but logging refers to the standard procedure. Nope, that's not it. That's not it. And then there's a bunch of really gross sex ones here. I thought A-log was documenting at like somebody's bad behavior, which I'm going to give you my definition. Documenting a target's bad behavior so that haters have a place to congregate and trade information. Trade information. I'll go ahead and shorten it to info. That's the way that I would define it. I don't know if that's accurate, but that's the way that I would do it. Is like it's borderline obsessive, but it's effectively you're documenting every single one of their misbehaviors. That way, people who hate that person have a place to go where they can easily get all of the information. Now, the next one I'm going to put in red because I do think it's like bad behavior. Doxing, I guess I'll use 1x because people are saying that it's 1x. Finding sensitive public and private information and publishing it to harass the target. Finding, I'm gonna reduce 3 letters so I can fit it all in the same thing. And then finally, there's swatting, which I'm gonna put in like blood red because obviously this is like the most swatting. Calling law enforcement. There's probably another step in here with doxing, which is like digital harassment where you like call in pizzas or whatever, but calling law enforcement with a fake, violent, serious call to harass target. That's swatting. And so effectively right now we have a variety of characters involved in the drama, and I'll put Steven, Kyla. Well, actually, let's do Dan, Kyla, Live and Learn crew, I would say me, and let's go ahead and put in Steven's kid, Nathan. So let's give us some boxes, okay? So right now, to my knowledge, Live and Learn crew. Okay. So let's go ahead and yeah, let's just use black. So people have talked shit about me on the internet, and I talk shit. I've made critical content of rivals and enemies. I've probably done some level of invective commentary, especially about like Hassan Piker. I fucking hate Hassan Piker. I've never A-logged. I don't give a shit about A-logging. Now, I think that for the Live and Learn crew, they have all of those things. But what's happened, I'll go ahead and put just this in red. People have doxed the Live and Learn crew. I'm pretty sure people have gone after Pisco. They've gone after Hutch. They've gone, I don't know if they've hit Josiah or Econo Boy, but they've gone after Pisco and Hutch. Then I would say that Kyla has been doxed and swatted. Dan has, I don't know if he's been swatted, but he's been doxed. Actually, let's change that to red. And then Steven and Nathan have been doxed and swatted. Okay, so this is what's happened to them. And then let's bring in JStock Queeman and text. Let's bring it over here. JStock Queeman, Doobie. Was there another person? Solo. And I guess we could put in, I guess we could put in Rose. And I'm trying to think of what else. Rose, Solo, Doobie, Queeman, JStock. Here. Okay. So what Doobie has said, in my opinion, not that, is he's maybe done some invective commentary, right? He said, Steven's a bad guy. He kind of sucks, you know, whatever. And he's a bad guy and he shouldn't have the professional, he shouldn't have the associations that he does because he's actually probably a bad guy. I would also say that Doobie's level of behavior is arguably, because he's not really much of a content creator, I would say that depending on who you're talking to, Doobie could say, I'm talking shit on the internet. Why the fuck are you treating me, number one, even like J-Stalker Queeman? But why are you treating me like I'm a swatter or a doxer? I'm neither of those things. And until proven otherwise, I'm actually pretty sympathetic to Doobie in this regard. I feel like he's, you know, until proven otherwise, I feel like he's catching a stray, right? I don't think that, to my knowledge, Doobie has not done this thing. And then with Solo, I would say that Solo has been involved in doxing. And it's arguable that Solo and Rose are operating as a single entity, because Rose helped create the content that Steve and sold it to Steven that is now currently hurting him. So I would say that Solo found sensitive information, public and private information, and published it to harass the target. I would say Solo was 100%. Even if the releasing of the private communications between Rose and Steven are not technically doxing because it's not like names, addresses, whatever, I would say that publishing the sensitive communications between Rose and Steven absolutely was like this threshold of harassment. Then what I would say is that J-Stock and Queeman are accused, credibly accused, and I think logically accused of A-logging, where they say Steven's a bad guy, he fucking sucks, you know, we're gonna make whenever he does anything bad whatsoever, we're gonna make content about it in order to document all of his malfeasance. That way everybody knows how big of a piece of shit he is. And I don't even know if they would deny that. I think they would do that. Now the argument is that Steven he's not trying to, in my opinion, he's not trying to swat them, or at least he hasn't said that he's going to swat J-Stock and Queeman. He said that he's going to dox them. And the reason why he's going to dox them is because his son, Dan, Kyla, and the Live and Learn crew has at minimum been doxed, and 3 of them have been swatted. And the 2 largest content creators who document all of his downfall, all of his sins, all of his bad behavior, are largely J-Stock and Queeman. And so he's saying, you know what? This stuff that's happening to me and my friends and family is so bad that you are participating in behavior that makes these things easier. So fuck you. I'm going to do this worst thing to you because you're at minimum creating communities that engage in this behavior. And then hold on. And so the argument is let's create the, like, I guess the drama community. He's saying, actually, hold on. This is important. Let me differentiate. Sorry, this is important. Bum, bum, bum. So let's say drama community, and let's say KF. Okay, let's do this. Well, actually, let's keep it in black just for consistency. KF. So KF is Kiwi Farms. And then, and then this is the drama community. DramaCom. So what Steven is saying is that the drama community 100% A-logs. They love A-logging. He's also saying that they go to Kiwi Farms. Well, actually, I should do the color. I should do the color, shouldn't I? Just to keep it clear. The drama community 100% A-logs. He's saying that, oh, snap. Sorry, my bad. We'll get there, guys. I promise. Let's draw a new line, I suppose. Red. The drama community participates with KF. And so, therefore, they are guilty of assisting in getting his personal information. And then also he's saying that KF and the drama community, there's such a correlative effect that J-Stock and Queeman effectively cultivate the drama community, and then the drama community is so linked with KF that they might as well be the same thing. That's his argument. I'm not saying whether or not it's true. I don't know whether, like, I don't know the specific creators who do this stuff. I don't know the specific Kiwi Farms profiles that do this stuff. So for me, this is all like speculative. But this is the mind map. This is exactly what's going on. This is the degree of seriousness that I think is warranted with all of these things, where like making critical content of rivals and enemies is normal. Talking shit on the internet is completely normal. Invective commentary, I would say, is relatively normal, and I engage with it. Steven engages with it. Everybody engages with it. A-logging, which means, in my opinion, picking a specific target and documenting all of their malfeasance in order to kind of like make it easy for the people who hate that person to hate that person. That I think is a step above, bordering on bad behavior, but it's perfectly legal and relatively common. Doxing is legal but bad. Swatting is obviously illegal. And so it's a question of whether or not you believe this line of argumentation. And what I think is that I need to redraw a new map with this information. KF drama community, J-Stock, Queeman, Doobie, Solo, and Rose. This is like almost the dynamics and moral justification for Steven's behavior. Dynamics, moral justification for Dox War. And then I need to redraw this just with Steven, KF, drama community, J-Stock, Queeman, Doobie, and Solo and Rose. So let's draw that one more time. I hope you guys are enjoying the stream. Quick shill, just because we do have a decent chunk of people in chat. Just Carpet 563 gave 5 gifted memberships. Deus Halcyon gave 5 gifted memberships. Fashion 40 gave 5 gifted memberships. Grassroots Hegemon making it fucking rain. Everybody say thank you to Grassroots Hegemon in chat. 20 gifted memberships. 20 gifted memberships. Pay his kindness forward. Grassroots is such a fucking king. It's crazy. It's crazy he's such a king. So anyways, like the stream, share it with your friends, engage in chat. Lots of smart, interesting, cool people. I will be reading chat momentarily, but I catch up with chat chronologically, so if I'm 20 minutes behind, please forgive me. Super chats if you got them, memberships if you got them. If you got money burning a hole in your pocket and Grassroots Hegemon gave you a membership, please consider gifting it forward. Obviously, I appreciate all of my supporters, Just Carpet 563, Deus Halcyon, and Fashion 40. Everybody chipping in what they can is super duper 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 appreciated. But with Grassroots, he doesn't need to be this kind. He's been this kind since the channel started. And what I think he likes to see is a good community built around good values. And he likes to see reciprocation, meaning that if he's generous, other people in the chat are generous as well. So please consider, if you got $5, $10, whatever, please consider gifting memberships. just because that kind of signals to grassroots that we're actually cultivating a good community. All right, I'm going to read chat for a minute, only because I actually enjoy engaging with my chat, and I do so in chronological order. Christian Blair says, should is the optimal word. I agree. We're talking about moral oughts here. Conservative liberalism says 26, like reporting in. Thanks for waiting, everyone. You may begin. Death Lily says 27. Thank you for coming in, guys. I appreciate you. Peter Marr says the issue is that the Republican Party of today isn't democratic, so really nobody's fighting for democracy. Well, I mean, I am. Sam says, I'm glad I have no idea who any of these people are. Good for you, Sam. I appreciate you. For democracy, Obi-Wan Kenobi. As a matter of fact, there's an old Republic trooper who says, in victory or death for the Republic. And I love that guy. Peter Mars says, where are the Jedi? I don't know. Ryan Kugler says, that's a huge range. True. Mackie Hilden says, I think a way to distinguish between enemies and rivals should incorporate the concept of narratives. Rivals have a common meta-narrative. Enemies have an opposed one. I agree with that, but there can be people who have opposed meta-narratives that are still so tactful and willing to operate within the liberal framework that I wouldn't label them as enemies. So, for instance, that's why with libertarian socialists or anarcho-communists, you can be an incrementalist who believes that you want to reform the system over time. You can also be a separatist, which means that you're going to pay your taxes and live within the United States of America, but you're effectively going to segregate yourself away from the broader project. I don't view that person as an enemy, right? Flint says, damn, how long will my message stand there? I feel singled out. Sorry, Flint. Unknown says, lots of Israelis are PDF files. Heard the guy who ran to Israel after being caught. Israel is a big place for people who run to go blah, 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 blah. We need to deal with the lobby. Unknown, I hate you so much. Chaos says, so what? Ryan Kugler says, that's like saying a jaywalker and a rapist. Sure. We're all judging your words, Flint. Death Lily says, literally, if Dems would just stop talking about guns, they move towards aggressive housing reform, they do good. Well, unironically, if Dems, I would still want to say that, like, I'm a never Trump Republican or a neoconservative or whatever, because you've seen it. Like, there is a stark difference between Stephen's permissiveness, which I think is rooted in the liberal political ideology of bad behavior, where he's like, well, I don't want to criticize lolicons, or I don't want to criticize this bad behavior because I don't see how it's morally different from XYZ ABC behavior that we don't criminalize or have half as much negative energy towards. He's using a liberal framework in order to argue for maximal human freedom, whereas I have a conservative view, which is effectively like, there's pro-social and anti-social behaviors, and in a good society, even a free society, we should be able to articulate what's pro-social and anti-social behaviors, and we should make moral judgments about which ones we want to reinforce. So there's a difference there. You can say that we're both liberals and that we believe in maximal human freedom, but we disagree on the line of where maximal human freedom is. Random Edit says, and Destiny wants to actively murder them as such. Who cares if they want him to self-delete? Well, yeah, but you're not making an argument about the dynamic. You're making an argument about whether or not it's justified. Chaos says, Destiny's guilty of the same stuff and worse that he accuses these people of. Sure, but that's the nature of reciprocal warfare. Flint says, I can imagine. Office Nasty says, I can't wait for the evidence Destiny showed you why Doobie, J-Stock, and Queeman. I actually don't think that... we can talk about that, Officer Nasty, but I think Doobie, I haven't seen any evidence besides the mind map that I just drew for you. I've seen Doobie, in my opinion, let me pull up my beautiful drawing now. Pictures. Dynamics. I've only seen Doobie participate maximally. Like, the maximum thing that I've done is seen him participate in invective commentary and talk shit on the internet. I haven't seen Doobie participate in A-logging, doxing, or swatting. And so as a result, for me, at least at this point, based off of available evidence, I think that Stephen's targeting priorities are totally off. But that's fine. Hans, it's not fine. It's not fine. Hans Mayer says, what is with the people with no ideological prescription and only hatred? I don't know. I'd have to think about that. Unknown says, I agree. Dems should stop talking about guns as long as while people can have their guns, everything's okay. Ryan Kugler says, does this really need to be typed out, Connor? Yes, Ryan Kugler. And by the way, this is the second time that you've been like, why are we talking about this? If you don't enjoy my content, go watch somebody else. It's fine. Like, dude, it's not personal. Okay, it's not personal. If I'm creating a certain style of content, for instance, we talked about a dry political topic last week, and instead of having the 150 to 200 people that we normally do when we're talking about Destiny related drama, we had like 100 people, but we had a great fucking time, and we had shitloads of donos. If this content isn't for you, it's not personal. Just don't watch it. But don't bitch to me in chat about the content that you're watching. Just click the back button or click the X button and go find something that's more entertaining to you. Espresso says, did J-Stock and Queeman get doxxed? I think J-Stock got face doxxed. I don't know if he got doxxed, like his home address and all that shit. I don't know about that. Peter Mars says, Dan Saltman is an expert at this. Look at his efforts against Twitch and people he personally hates. Absolutely, which is kind of where it's good for the goose, good for the gander. I'm going to read a few more, then get back into it. Unknown says, so for the culture stuff, we can do housing reform and free healthcare or universal healthcare. Dems should just drop culture wars and gun stuff for a while. I mean, I kind of agree with that. Mackie Hilden says, not just publishing, putting info out there is not enough. The goal should be to shape perception so that you impose your will on a population to achieve desired actions. I mean, I agree that that's information warfare. Absolutely. Gen X says Trump's announcement today is Defense Department related, so Trump's to Ukraine or Hegseth fired. No, it's probably just him talking about the Department of War change, like he's changing Department of Defense to Department of War, which is cringe and stupid and dumb. However, they're probably just proving that he's alive and capable of forming sentences. That would be my guess. So. Gen X says, guys, my legislative session is 7 months away and I already have 3 bills to write. That is bad news. Well, I wish you luck with that. Here's says, what is bro doing? I'm making mind maps. That's what I'm doing. Hopeless says, Doobie talked bad about me. That means I can dox him like a good liberal. Well, I mean, that's where I would say that the target priority and target severity are not proportional. But let's go ahead and make that map. You made a point. I kind of agree with your point descriptively. Let's go ahead and build a mind map for that. So this is like descriptive. This isn't even prescriptive. This is just like Steven, Nathan, and Kyla have all been swatted. They've also been doxxed, A-logged, had invective commentary created about them. People have made critical content of them, and people have talked shit about them on the internet. If I point to somebody up here, just assume that everything below that has happened to them as well. So Steven, Nathan have been swatted. Dan's been doxxed. Kyla's been swatted. Live and Learn crew's been doxxed. To my knowledge, they haven't been swatted. People have created invective commentary about me, but to my knowledge, they haven't A-logged me, doxed me, or swatted me. I expect to get doxxed eventually. But I don't think I'm enough of a rage cow or lol cow to get A-logged, at least not yet. And nobody's swatted me yet, right? So yeah, let's make the let's use this as inspiration, and let's create one more mind map for exactly the criticism. And by the way, I love this shit. I don't know if you guys love this shit, but I fucking love taking complex, messy drama and commentary and making it clear through mind maps. I like this more than react Andying to the drama of the day. So I don't know if you guys feel the same way. But that's how I feel. Because we could sit here for like 2 hours, watch some fucking 80 IQ dipshit create mediocre fucking content, pause every 5 minutes and try to do something. I'm gonna put Doobie at the bottom. I'm gonna be real. I have not seen any. I have not seen sufficient evidence for Doobie to really even be on this chart. So I'm actually surprised that Doobie is even here. If there's additional evidence that Doobie is like some 5D chess playing master manipulator, then I mean I'll look at the evidence or whatever, but I don't think Doobie should be here almost at all. Queeman, J-Stock. Well, I guess I should really move it over here, shouldn't I? I should. J-Stock. Drama community. And then Kiwi Farms. And let's take a look, make sure we didn't lose anybody. KF, Drama Community, J-Stock, Queeman, Doobie, Solo, and Rose. Okay, that's fine. I'm fine with this. And then we got Steven. Steven Bennell, aka Destiny, over here. And so if we take the, let me open up my recent one because I think the mind map would be useful. Pictures. What was it called again? I forget what it's called. Where's my Kiwi Farms, my enemy's mind map? I'm sorry for yawning. I'm tired. Here it is. Save. Doxxing War. Can I copy this and put this in a new paint? Is that possible? Oh, I can only have one file open at the same time. Okay, damn it. That's okay. That's okay. We can work with this. File recent Doxxing War. Okay. So let me just open up the picture, I suppose, and I'll use the picture for guidance. All right, so we got red, we got swatting. Sorry for yawning, guys. Swatting, slight less red. We got doxing. For orange, we got A-logging. A-logging. Yellow, we have invective commentary. Let me change it to the yellow-orange. Invective commentary. And then for green, we got making critical content. And we have talking shit. All right. I think that it is reasonable to believe that these people have engaged in some level of this. And this is actually the mismatch in the drama, in my opinion. And let me go ahead and make this, let me make this a little bit cleaner. Let me put this as like a color code system up in the top left. So hopefully people can understand what the lines mean if they're coming in from chat late. But this is the problem. This is actually legitimately the fucking problem, is that there seems to be a mismatch in what's being done. And so Steven is being criticized for saying that people are engaged in one style of behavior, whereas the people who are suffering consequences are saying like, well, I'm not engaged in that behavior, so why are you punishing me to this degree? That's effectively the argument. And let me move Steven over here. Yep. Steven. I promise we'll get there. All right. So with Steven, he's not saying that he's going to dox someone, but he's saying that KF or people who use KF have swatted him. That's what he's saying. So this has happened. Then what he's saying is that if he is capable of finding these people, which is difficult because KF uses proxy IPs, multiple people use VPNs when they use KF. They use whatever, like secret modes that mask your IP. They do all that kind of stuff. So if he finds somebody that he can dox on KF who is guilty in any degree, then he is going to dox them back, right? I think he would say that. Then for the drama community, he is saying that at minimum, because he accuses the drama community of effectively being a thin veil for KF, where anybody who participates, not anybody, but a substantive amount of people who participate in the drama community, they also participate in KF. So they're at minimum either responsible or partially responsible for his doxing. They might not be responsible for his swatting, but they're responsible for his doxing. Then with J-Stock and Queeman, their argument is that they are A-logging him. Sorry. Their argument is that they're A-logging him, which means that they're documenting every single one of his missteps, misspeaks, fuck-ups, all that kind of stuff. But Steven, in return, is saying that he'll fucking dox them. And this is where, like, a lot of people get super uncomfortable, like including me, by the way. Because if you're going to dox, like, random drama community members under suspicion that they're secret Kiwi farmers, that's, you know, like, at minimum, it's fucked up. I don't know if you can legally, unless you're proven to be harassing people using the dox information, I don't know if legally you can be held accountable for that, but I think that morally you can absolutely be fucking criticized. Right? And then, sorry, that's done. And then with Solo, with Solo, again, you know, we can argue about, like, severity, but Solo is 100%, you know, guilty of taking Steven's personal information and publishing it in order to damage him. Steven 100% will dox Solo if he can find him. 100%. And then he kind of did dox Rose, which was stupid. Very stupid. But that's okay. He did that because she is the vehicle through which he is being attacked. And honestly, if she stepped forward and was like, hey, yeah, you know, like if Rose stepped forward and said, hey, yeah, I did lie about my age. Steven didn't know that I was underage. I did this fucked up shit. This guy Solo is actually an asshole ex-boyfriend. Yes, he kind of, like, you know, sex trafficked me and encouraged me to be engaged in sex work. Yes, he's a fucking piece of shit and fuck Solo. That would actually help out Steven, because Steven could be like, see, like, I wasn't, you know, as evil as you guys like to speculate I am. So again, like, I think this is absolutely objectionable that Rose should be doxxed, because obviously, I don't know, she was what, like a 17 claiming to be 18-year-old girl at the time that Steven and her first talked, allegedly. And now she's what, like an early 20-year-old girl who's trying to get her shit together. Like, yeah, I don't know of what sins Rose is guilty of. So I do find that fucked up. And then with Solo, though, Solo I don't give a fuck about. I think Solo should get as good as he's getting. Now, this is where I actually do have an objection, a pretty strong objection, pending evidence, is that at maximum, okay, Doobie could be accused. God damn it. Give me the line. Sorry for the GD, but Doobie could be accused of invective commentary and backing up invective commentary. But Doobie's argument is that he's just engaged in making critical content, and he's engaged in talking shit on the internet. And so why should Doobie be targeted for the same level of vitriol, hatred, and harassment that these other people are engaged in? And pending additional evidence, I agree with Doobie. I think that the attempts to dox Doobie are misplaced targeting. I think that Steven is taking all of the hatred and anger that he has towards these other creators. KF, I think, is potentially justified from a reciprocal perspective, but I don't think that it's good moral behavior. The drama community, same thing. J-Stock, Queeman, etc. Solo Rose. I don't think that counter doxing or doing Old Testament morality is good, let alone the way out. Stephen and I actually disagree on the way out, and we'll talk about that momentarily. Black. So Stephen thinks that this is justified, that this is like Old Testament morality. Old Testament morality justification for the Dox War. And so Stephen is saying, I have been more grievously wronged specifically by Kiwi Farms and Solo. Therefore, the drama community, J-Stock, and Queeman engaging in A-logging behavior that allows people to dox and swap me. They know what they're doing, where they know they're making it easier for these bad things to happen to me. Therefore, fuck them. I'm going to go after them arguably harder, but from Steven's perspective, as hard as they are going against him. But people kind of criticize me for mentioning like the critical moral or the Christian moral system. But I'm going to show you guys an alternate way out that I think that Stephen should strongly consider. He should strongly consider what I'm about to say next. Save as Old Testament moral justification for the Dox War. In Old Testament, for like those of you who are unfamiliar, the Old Testament and the New Testament, okay? The Old Testament of the Bible is the story of the Jewish people. It's actually the Torah, and it's pre-Jesus. And Jesus's like most popular teachings were like the temple on the mount and turn the other cheek and render unto Caesar what is Caesar's. And it's a bunch of behavior that we take for granted in the Western world that is related to like reciprocity, but also like mercy and kindness. And it's something that I was raised with. You know, a lot of people are like, oh, Conor, you're not a real Christian because you don't believe in Christ. You're not a real Christian because you don't believe in the messianic Christ. However, for me, I feel like I live more of a Christian life than a lot of Christians because I don't believe in this shit. I don't believe if KF is swatting you, I don't think that swatting a Kiwi Farms member or doxing a Kiwi Farms member is going to stop you from getting swatted. I don't think that doxing members of the drama community is going to stop you from getting doxed. I don't think that doxing J-Stock, Queeman, Solo, Rose, or Doobie is going to end the harassment. And so we're going to get into the New Testament game plan. So New Testament, end to the Dox War. New Testament into the Dox War versus Old Testament. And we'll do the New Testament and the Old Testament. And this is probably going to be where like I lose a healthy chunk of GGG because they're just going to be like, no, Old Testament is based. Burn my enemies, kill my enemies, destroy my enemies. They'll be quoting fucking Conan the Barbarian. They'll be like, that there is nothing more glorious than driving your enemies before you and hearing the lamentations of their women. Like that's, I don't know why it went Scottish after it went Austrian first, but you know me, guys. My impressions are terrible. All right, so let's put New Testament in here and let's check in with chat. I wish I could check out, like, I could probably catch up the chat momentarily, but I want to see what you guys said in the past because there are some funny things that you guys said in the past, obviously. Shit. There we go. Sorry. Just need to get this looking right. New Testament. All right. So Hosbar says he's fighting leftists because right-wingers have known this all along. Everybody else thought it was an overreaction. Sure. Prudo says, do leftists think liberals are rich sex freaks in general? I feel like that's specifically about Steve. It is more specifically about Steve, but there are also like the criticisms of the cosmopolitan elites, and cosmopolitan is like, you know, urbanites, people who live in cities. And so there's this general vibe. I'm a suburbanite, but there's this general vibe that if you go downtown, you're going downtown to make money, to drink alcohol, and to have sex. That's why you're going downtown. And so I think the urbanite cosmopolitan criticism, while it is specific for Steve, I think it's generalized for cosmopolitan elites. Unknown says, Senator Dems excuse murder too. Just look at Israel. They deny genocide. I think I put that into my list. Gen X says, I'm not listening at all. Lol. Random Edits says, Prudus, it is just him, but for some reason there's hope that Stephen will even ever be in the mainstream again. Dude, I think he's going to get back into the mainstream. If the court case gets dismissed, and if there's no evidence that Rose, that Stephen knew Rose was underage, I think he's getting back into the mainstream. Sorry to burst your bubble. Passion 40 says, if Stephen, the progenitor of leftist voices for YouTube and Twitch crowd, is defeated, the left will lose their biggest weapon. Well, I don't think he's going to get defeated unless there's evidence that we currently don't have. Unknown says, no one liked private insurance, and I think Luigi at least scared CEOs that done stuff that killed people too. Yeah, but you're just justifying it. You're not arguing that the leftists don't believe that. Hosbar says they describe him as these things because there's a plethora of evidence. These aren't false depictions of Destiny, even if these particular streamers can be dishonest with other things. I didn't say they were dishonest. I said those are the accusations. Fashion 40 says, I love BTC, but he can't. Oh, Brian Tyler Cohen, but he can't fight in the mud. He's a wealthy white man who espouses that energy. Josiah can't fight in the mud because he's not quick, and Hutch is just not as aggressive. I agree. That's why I like the mud, by the way. I like fighting in the mud. I'm not the best fighter in the mud, but I think I'm pretty good. Unknown says, you guys don't think Senator Dems excuse murder too? Oh my God, shut up. New user says they will say anything they feel will have an impact with no concern for the consequences. In fact, they get giddy when the consequences roll in for everyone except themselves. True. Brian Kugler says this isn't drama. There's potentially criminality being alleged. Drama can have criminality involved in it. His detractors can be absolute pieces of shit, but that doesn't change the validity of any of these accusations. Nobody said that. Nobody said that. Hosbar says, Andy Oak points out that it's like acidic, but the opposite pH. Yeah, I think that it's like basic. Like if something is caustic, it's because of acidity versus baseness. Baseness is what dissolves you slow in the opposite direction of acidity. Hosbar, sorry. Hosbar says, I don't think most people believe he's a molester. I do believe most people believe he's attracted to people probably 13 plus, maybe not small children. We've all just been watching him for 10 plus years. Gross. Caitlin says, I don't think Stephen would qualify as clinically sociopathic, although he does act like it in a colloquial sense at times. Yes. Ryan Kugler says, how does Pisco and Hutch do it? Do what? They just got doxxed because they were proximate to Stephen. That's my understanding of it. I think Stephen himself has said that people have asked whether or not Pisco and Hutch and the Live and Learn crew should get doxxed because of their criticisms of Stephen, but he said no. Like he's not trying to target people who are critical of him in general. That, like, I've been critical. I was critical to him, you know, when I was in town 2 days ago. What he's trying to attack are the people that he believes are responsible for his swatting and harassment. Chaos Ma says, Destiny won't be punished enough. Who are we kidding? Well, there you go. Cheap viewers on streamboo.com. Remove the space. Well, I don't bot, so I'm not going to be botting. Officer Nasty says, wait, Conor creator, did Destiny deserves all the harassment coming to him? That's a crazy claim. I think 100%. If you ask Queeman or J-Stock, they might not avow swatting, but I almost guarantee you that they're going to say that Stephen getting swatted with his kid at home is Stephen's fault. They're going to say that the drama community and Dan and Kyla and Live and Learn crew getting doxxed is because of Stephen's bad behavior, not because the drama community is necessarily responsible. They're going to say that A-logging. I mean, dude, I talked to J-Stock on Twitter yesterday via replies, and he was saying, like, well, it's my, you know, Stephen is one of the biggest creators and he's crashing out, so it's my God-given right to A-log his downfall. J-Stock in drama community in Queeman, they're not going to say that like A-logging is bad. They think that A-logging is perfectly morally neutral and legal and whatever. so they don't care. And they're going to say that doxing is not their fault. That's just the nature of Steven and Dan and Kyla's bad behavior. And Kyla's bad behavior, allegedly, which I don't agree with, is sweeping for Steven. Nathan is getting hurt because he's a direct family member. Dan is getting doxxed because not only is he friends with Steven, but Dan also participates in doxing. That's that Dan, what was it? Somebody said that they didn't think that anything else was valuable for the membership, so they were going to steal the content and repost it to a pirate place. And I think Dan tracked down their personal information, found that person's wife, and called their wife at work. That's fucking crazy. Okay. If that's true, if the way that I articulated that is descriptively true, Dan is fucking crazy and should not do that shit. That's fucking repulsive. Hospar says Destiny likely won't be punished at all. He may just be vindicated through all type of technicality like he usually is. Yeah, there's this meme of like, oh, look at old Donald Trump. There's no way he's going to wiggle his way out of this one. Donald Trump wiggles his way out quite easily. Ha, well, but nevertheless. And like, that's what I feel like. Of course, anything could be revealed and then Steven goes down. Absolutely, that's possible. But I feel like the critics and the A-loggers, they might need, and the doxers and the swatters, they might need to be ready for Steven not killing himself and Steven continuing to make political commentary content that is popular. They might need to be ready for that. New user says it's not just drama when people are genuinely in fear for their lives. To be honest, I hope Destiny finds his retribution. These fucks turned his own son against him. Well, that's where we'll get into New Testament versus Old Testament morality. Paul says merch idea, paint diagrams on t-shirts. Yeah, we're absolutely going to do that. We're absolutely. This would be a banger fucking shirt. Just Carpet, I caught up with your 5 memberships donations. Thank you kindly. And then we got a couple more donations. Silver became a new member. Thank you, Silver. I parasocially love you. Thank you for being here. Penguin for $5 is doxing Doobie vital to beating Trump and saving the Republic. No. As a matter of fact, Penguin, I would say that doxing Doobie is probably a misplaced priority and misplaced hatred. Until I see that Doobie is involved in A-logging, then I think that Steven's behavior is not just him trying to dox Doobie is not justifiable. And then until I see that like JStock, Queeman, and specific KF users are participating in doxing, I don't think it's just to dox them back. I don't think that's going to save Steven from the digital harassment that he's suffering. We'll get into that in a moment, I promise. Thank you for the donation, though, even though you've been critical in the past. Caleb for $5 says, Doobie was arguing on panel that it's Israel's fault that the guy murdered the couple outside the museum. Unironically, don't care what happens to him. Well, you gotta take the good with the bad, I guess. Where is the Just Carpet donation? Just Carpet up here. Oh, Deus Halcyon. I guess you kicked it off. Thank you, Deus Halcyon. Again, I parasocially love you. Oh, there's Just Carpet. AF Racing says, while it's not his fault, he does have little kid voice. Don't know who you're talking shit about, but that's okay. Hasbar said he said this himself. Money isn't typically punishment for someone like him. I agree. Just Carpet 563 says, been gone for a minute. Here's back pay. Thank you. I appreciate you, Just Carpet 563. Definitely Hutch does good with normies, but the Spurks and debate bro commentary community he's not good with. True. AF Racing says Hutch has been aggressively bald for quite some time now. He just needs to bring that aggression to politics. Rude. So rude. Definitely says we do need more likes on the stream. That's a reminder to like the stream, share it with your friends. If you have a good time, hang out with us. I mean, obviously drama is always going to get better metrics, but we also talk about cool, highfalutin, complex political dynamics and geopolitics and history and other stuff and other dramas that aren't related to Steven. So if you have a good time, hang out in the chat. Super chats if you got them, memberships if you got them. I parasocially love you for being here. Alexandria Vazushu says, I think what people miss about the attempts to dislodge Destiny is that it seems like the people that go after him start by disliking him and then try to farm arguments against him afterwards. I mean, are you wrong? And that's always going to mean your arguments are less likely to be concrete. True. Deus Halcyon, thank you for your gifted memberships. I parasocially love you. Pruda says, yeah, part of the problem is people spend way too much time online obsessively feeding their violent and socially unacceptable pathologies. I agree unironically. Prudus, this is what I was trying to communicate to Stephen. He viewed the person sitting inside a basement drawing paraphilic things as morally neutral, whereas I view that as morally bad because our time is limited. I don't know if you guys knew that, but we're going to die someday. And as a matter of fact, I'm halfway through my life. I'm in my late 30s. So I am literally descriptively halfway through my life. So how we spend our lives is not morally neutral. There are better things that you can spend your life doing. And while drama is probably not one of those better things, it's, you know, it's like having a soda, you know, like, is it good for you? No. Does it taste delicious? Yes. Can you derive more serious thoughts from drama? Yes. So that's what I try to do. I try to take drama and I try to derive more serious things from it. Flint says nothing to disagree with there, but for a specific group, there is no healthy outlet, which is the problem. I mean, I agree, but that's where you should starve that part of your brain, in my opinion, based off of the argument of neuroplasticity. And by the way, the other healthier thing is to look at normal, healthy porn. The other, like adult pornography. The other healthy thing to do is to, I don't know, engage in romantic relationships with people of a similar age to yourself. Hosbar says, I started by liking Destiny as a rational thinker on the left with some decent prescriptions. Over the last decade, he's moved me further and further from him through his own words and actions. Sure. I'm only going to read a few more, then we're going to get into the Old Testament versus New Testament thing. Flint says, like, I don't buy Destiny's argument either. Just because there's harm to anyone doesn't mean there isn't something wrong, but just change is not really a solution. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. Just change. Your brain is the only thing that you're in control of. You're not in control of anything else. And willpower is a very well documented psychological phenomena. Using and practicing willpower in order to control your own brain and body is the only thing on this planet that you have the remotest amount of control over. That is the only thing you can control. You don't control me. You don't control the stream. You don't control the world. You don't control your family. You don't control your friends. You don't control gravity. You don't control the heat death of the universe. You don't control spaceships or rockets or airplanes or cars. All you can do is control yourself. So if you're unwilling to control yourself, then you're not willing to control anything. Like, you can argue that, like, we have an illusion of control, but I will tell you the people who practice willpower are infinitely better off than the people who think that willpower is an illusion. Fast and Bulbous says, I understand, just disagree. I love gore and always will. Well, you might be a little psychologically fucked up, Fast and Bulbous. Also, I'm pretty sure you're one of my primary anti-natalists, if I remember some of your previous super chats. So the fact that you're anti-natalist and love gore would actually be yellow or orange or even red flags that there's something fucked up in your life. Afax says, yeah, Destiny might technically not be wrong, but it's clearly pretty clear there's a better answer. We're going to get into that momentarily. 2 or 3 more, I promise. Mackie Hilden says there's a difference between something being good and something being obligatory. Sure. Hosbar says everybody has at least a morbid curiosity towards violence and death. It is why we look at car accidents, but this isn't news. Sure. Invalid Autist says, yo, first stream, that podcast with Destiny was awesome, man. We really need more dudes out there like you pushing for more moderate conservative stuff. What's with the title? I mean, the title's just accurate. What's the title? The Doxxing War. The Doxxing War is between Destiny and the drama community. Fashion 40, thank you for the 5 gifted memberships. Grassroots Hegemon, thank you again for your 20 gifted memberships. I really do appreciate it. Like, seriously, I'm tearing up a little bit. I'm so proud of this community. I love you guys, parasocially, of course. All right, Old Testament. Let's do it. We're putting biblical principles and scriptural historical principles into our alleged criminal sex drama. So, Old Testament is eye for an eye. Vengeance can be justice. Retribution is common in both God's justice and the justice of the Jews. Violent cataclysms are a part of God's justice. Meting out, giving out is a less complicated word. Giving out horrific violence slash judgment is not only normal, it is correct. And, you know, we could go deeper on this, right? Eye for an eye, vengeance can be justice, retribution is common in both God's justice and the justice of the Jews. Violent cataclysms are a part of God's justice. Giving out horrific violence slash judgment is not only normal, it's correct. As an example, there was the Canaanite tribe. I don't know if they were Canaanites, but they were in that area of the Philistines. There was the Amalekites. I think Amalekits, but you can Google the Amalekites. And when Israel and Judea was conquering that territory, the Amalekites were ordered not only to be put to the sword, but they were so evil, according to the prophet Samuel, that you needed to put the men to the sword, you needed to put the women to the sword, you needed to kill the children, and not only did you need to kill the children, you needed to kill their livestock, their corruption, their degeneracy, their natural evil was so evil that you needed to kill the kids and even the livestock. That's fucking crazy pants, but that's a part of the Old Testament. All right, so for the New Testament, it's what is it? It's like turn the other cheek. Sorry. Turn the other cheek. The other cheek. He who lives by the sword dies by it. What is it? Turn the other cheek. He who lives by the sword dies by it. Render unto Caesar. Caesar, what is Caesar's? Render unto God what is God's. Sin, guilt, mercy, atonement, forgiveness, cycle, and go forth and sin no longer. And so this, in my eyes, is the other way out. And Stephen and DGG is effectively arguing that they should handle the situation from an Old Testament perspective. And the truth is that, like, that's more entertaining, right? You know, we all like to see some violence. We all like to see some drama. We all like to see people fighting each other, ripping each other to shreds, relationships getting burned, people, you know, crying and wailing and the gnashing of teeth. We all like love that to some degree. It's inherently compelling content. But my problem with this is that this isn't just content. This is people's lives. So when Stephen says that he's going scorched earth, he's not the only person who is going to suffer when these people use the same line of logic in order to justify doxing and swatting Stephen, in order to justify harassing Nathan, in order to justify harassing Kyla and Dan and Dan's family. They're going to say the same thing. Stephen's going to say, well, I'm just, I'm correct, I'm right. Therefore, if you poke out my eye, I'm going to poke out yours. My revenge isn't revenge, it's justice. Retribution is not only just, it's correct. Violent cataclysm against me, horrible, sad, disgusting, gross. Violent cataclysm against you, go fuck yourself. Who gives a shit? You're an evil piece of shit. Giving out horrific violence and judgment is not only normal, it's correct. That's Stephen's current perspective, in my opinion, is that if J-Stock committed suicide, if J-Stock was harassed into the ground, if J-Stock's digital career exploded, he wouldn't give a fuck. He would laugh. He would think that it was good. Same thing with Queeman. Whereas what I would do as somebody who was raised with Christian morality is I would mourn what J-Stock could have been, the human being that he could have been, the content he could have created, the things that he could have manifested into the world. And so I'm weeping for the loss of potential in any human being. It could be fucking Hitler before he commits the Holocaust, and I would be like, damn, bro, these paintings are pretty good. You should be a fucking painter, you know? And then with the New Testament, turn the other cheek. You know, that's like a very famous, you know, biblical passage is when somebody strikes you, offer them your other cheek. And the whole point is that when you don't react to the oppressions of the world, when you don't react to the injustice of the world, when you don't react to people shitting on you, spitting on you, all that kind of stuff, often what happens is they get bored because they want to see you fight back. They want to see you cry. They want to see you fall apart. They want to see you die. And so when you turn the other cheek and you just go, yeah, okay, you don't like me, go fuck yourself. Oftentimes what happens is the other person is like, they're like bewildered by it. Not only are they bewildered by you turning the other cheek, they might say, wow, if that had been done to me, I'd be a fucking mess. But that happened to that other guy, and he doesn't give a fuck. Not only does he give a fuck, he leaned into the suffering. That's very interesting. And that's actually how Christians got a shitloads of converts through the medieval period and through the Roman period, is they had a completely different moral system that actually ended up, in my opinion, being more just. And he who lives by the sword dies by it. I still think that there's justified cases of violence, but I think that once you engage in violence, you can't be shocked when violence is used against you. If you join the military, you should expect that there's some degree to the point that, like, if you're going out there and killing people, somebody can come back and kill you. And same thing with the doxing and the swatting. If Stephen participates in doxing and swatting, he can't be, well, he's not participating in swatting, but if he participates in doxing, he can't be surprised that doxing is coming back his way. He can't be surprised when, as a result, let's say that he does dox J-Stock and Queeman and they suffer harassment as a result. He can't be surprised when they go, oh yeah, well, fuck it. You're going to fuck on me. I'm going to fuck on you. And then they do the same thing back. Render unto Caesar what is Caesar's. This is effectively an appeal to operating within like God and legalism and all that kind of stuff. And then sin, guilty, mercy, atonement, and forgiveness. So if I commit a sin, and Stephen and I view sin differently, but I'm going to describe Stephen's sin from an outside perspective. Stephen suffers from the sin of pride. He suffers from the sin of lust. He suffers to some degree to the sin of gluttony if you correlate it with lust. He doesn't like, engage with food the same way that he engages with sex, but I think he engages with life with a certain gluttonous appetite. And I think it's because he thinks when he dies, nothing is going to happen and he's going to go into oblivion. So he needs to maximally enjoy his current existence, which means that he needs to do hard drugs when he can. He needs to have sex when he can. He needs to do this. He needs to do that. And so he approaches life with a gluttonous attitude. But that sin has, in my opinion, has spawned other sins, which is, again, I'm not a biblical literalist. I'm just talking about it from a religious perspective. He's engaged in promiscuous sex. He's engaged in premarital sex. He's done intoxicants and drugs that, modify the way that you think about things. Despite suffering grievous consequences and his family suffering grievous consequences and his friends suffering grievous consequences, he's not really willing to change a substantive part of his behavior, except for maybe he's going to moderate some of his lust and some of his gluttony in order to be less consequential to the other people that he engages with in sexual liaisons and to his friends and family. That's really it. He took about 10 to 20% off of her. When I'm talking to Stephen about like, well, hey, maybe you need to change your behavior. He's like, yeah, I took about 10 to 20% off of my bad behavior. And it's like, okay, well, that might be enough in order to avoid consequence, but it's not enough to end the situation. And so for me, that brings us to go forth and sin no longer. The whole point of like a Christian, and again, I'm not a literalist. I do not think that Jesus was the Messiah. I just think that it's a good moral system that creates a more just, healthy, happy society. So the whole point of go forth and sin no longer is once you engage in bad behavior in which you reap negative consequences, or it correlates with negative consequences, once you learn your lesson, you don't commit the same sin. You chill the fuck out. You try to live a better life. And so, in my opinion, Stephen is almost the parable of the prodigal son, but he's not returning to his father. And his father doesn't have to be literal. It doesn't have to be God. It doesn't have to be his biological father. But he's not returning to his society. He's still engaging in egregious social behaviors that are antisocial that he's going to reap consequences for. And so he is not going forth and sinning no longer. He is continuing down the path of the prodigal son. And for those of you who don't know the parable of the prodigal son, it's a guy who his dad is a rich farmer, and so he asks for his inheritance early. He goes to the city and he gambles away his father's money. He, bangs a bunch of prostitutes and drinks a bunch of wine and hangs out and gambles and parties and all that kind of stuff. And then he's destitute and he's living a shitty life that his father had warned him against. And he's like, damn, I'm like down here, homeless, poor, covered in mud, eating pig slop because I can't afford real food. Where did I go wrong? And then he's like, well, shit, I'm going to go back to my dad and I'm going to beg for mercy. And I'm going to beg to be a field hand. I'm going to beg to be a slave, because at least a slave has a roof over his head, food in his belly, and work. Whereas I'm living in squalor and mud and eating pig slop. And so he goes back to his father, and his father celebrates his return, and he bathes him and gives him, clothing and all that kind of stuff. And he's not going to get I don't think he's going to get an inheritance, right? But he's still welcomed back into his family. And the whole point of it is like, he was like, I lost my son, but now he's returned. He was dead, but now he's alive. He was lost and now he's found. There's all these like beautiful sentences about how the society, the father, in this parable is happy to embrace its son who is going forth and sinning no longer. But again, Stephen and I disagree on the nature of sin. We disagree on the morality that would save him. We disagree on all this kind of stuff. And so here's my point too. This is an important point, is if Stephen stopped fucking around with young chicks, if he stopped being a gooner and a coomer, if he focused on his political projects, if he didn't engage in promiscuous short-term relationships, what ammunition, and if he survives his trial, both his civil trial and his potential criminal liability, if he survives all of this, with what ammunition will his enemies take him out if he lives a more moderate life? If he smokes a little bit of pot, drinks a little bit of alcohol, hangs out in his apartment, creates content for his audience, and lives a moderate sexual life, with what ammunition will his enemies attack him? Because he can say, oh, all my bad behavior was relegated to 2023, and I engaged in hedonistic behavior through 2025, but I'm an infinitely more moderate person now, and I try to live like a just and virtuous life. They can say like, oh, you were a piece of shit. And it's like, yeah, I was a piece of shit, but I'm trying not to be a piece of shit. That's the end of the conversation in my regard. So anyways, I strongly recommend. Love you, baby. Baby, can I have some water, please? Pretty please. Can I have a snack? Anything. Something with calories and water, please. Thank you. I have this cup. Thank you. I love you. I love you a lot. All right. So anyways, so my recommendation is that Stephen shifts to over here. And so that's kind of the end of the mind map and the dox war and the drama. I'm going to go ahead and check in with chat now and just read everything that chat had to say. So again, quick shill time before I engage with chat. Like the stream, share it with your friends. If you had a good time, come back tomorrow on Valor Media Network, VALOR, Media Common Spelling Network Common Spelling. Like I said, engage with chat. Lots of funny, interesting people in there. If you have a super chat burning a hole in your pocket, go ahead and do that. If you want to gift memberships, it's greatly appreciated. Grassroots Hegemon, Just Carpet 563, Deus Halcyon, and a few other people have already donated today, and I parasocially love you for doing so. All right. Speaking of which, Grassroots Hegemon gifted 20 Counterpoints memberships. Thank you, King. Seriously, I parasocially love you for that. Thank you for supporting the channel. Pruda says, there's a huge difference between fake gore and getting off on real harm being done to people and animals and seeking out that content, and incentivizing its creation is wrong. Correct. Gen X says, lol, Connor thought that's how people spell doxing, if that's what you mean. I think you just put an extra X. Yes, I thought that's how doxing was spelled. It's kind of like schizo with tomfoolery where he put a T into it. Peter Mars says the beast strikes again. Indeed, Luigi is a hero. APAC traders. Yeah, APAC traders, you can go fuck yourself. I think you're an evil piece of shit and you can suck a dick. APAC trader says it's not just the left to love Luigi. If I got no hospital help for private insurance. Okay, I think you make the world a worse place. A succulent Chinese meal. Indeed. Indeed. Random Edit says the gore thing can be simplified. I like good effects and violence in the right kind of movie, but I don't like seeing it in real life because a real person is suffering. Indeed. APAC says I got kicked out of a hospital because of private health insurance. No other country does this in the West. Luigi expressing all of our feelings. Don't be a shill. CEOs are killers too. All right. I think you make the world a worse place, but that's okay. Elder Millennial says good stuff. Empathy and being thankful for where you are never hurt anybody. True. Veds Neil says to be fair though, venting is an art that should be learned from women. They're kind of right. It's not all about fixing a problem. Sure. Destiny is using a human PDF shield. I'm not sure that's going to work the way that he wants it to work. I agree. Using food shops is a bad idea, in my opinion. I think it's totally counterproductive. And for those of you who don't know, Food Shops is a live streamer who a year ago, 2 years ago, she was an unrepentant lolicon. Apparently she has issues with my criticism, but I don't know if she criticizes lolicon right now. She still jokes about it being cool and normal and neutral. And I think that's fucking gross. And I think Steven is stupid for using her as an A-log weapon against his critics. S says, am I evil for listening to brutal death metal and watching horror movies? No, of course not. Janek says, I don't like either one, but I don't care that much. How can we care about gore when there's a genocide happening? True. Conor has small, perky moves. Okay, yeah, they're very perky. Hosbar says, I think what Conor just said about lolly versus real crimes may be true, but it's also the problem we run into with secular moral frameworks. Yeah, I agree. Girls love to snuggle with my moobs. Yes, they do. Or she is busy at school and it had nothing to do with Conor. Lol. Not sure who we're talking about, but that's okay. Evidence of ghosts is difficult to find. I've seen a ghost. I've told Chad about that once, but it's okay. Kay says, if you found out Lolicon actually reduced the creation of real CSAM and didn't lead to real life abuse, would you reconsider the stance? Not that you'd like it, just that you'd ignore it more or less. I don't know if I'd ignore it. I think that I would indict it as a moral bad and push people to not consume it and to be more normal. However, maybe it would be like culturally tolerated as an alternative due to some kind of statistically provable thing. But that's the thing about evil. That's the thing about evil is do you allow a small evil to exist in order to prevent a greater evil? The answer is broadly yes, but then you also have to verify that allowing that smaller evil to exist actually does what its proponents claim to say it does, right? Officer Massey says, do you think Destiny not providing you evidence is indicative of anything? Perhaps that one side is wrong? No, because I think descriptively, Officer Nasty, the whole argument from Steven is that A-logging and having a community that cross-pollinates with KF basically tells you that the doxing and the swatting is coming from KF, and it cross-pollinates into the drama community, and J-Stock and Queeman A-log him. So he's saying that it's there because these are the two biggest creators, maybe not biggest is the wrong word, but they're the two most hyper-focused creators on why Steven is such a piece of shit, that they are fostering the environment that leads to his doxing and swatting. So no, I don't think that Steven is descriptively incorrect, that the drama commentary in KF is likely responsible for the doxing and swatting of him and his orbiters. I disagree with him on his tactics. I think that he should go forth and sin no longer. I think he should substantively reduce his gooning behavior. I think he should study virtues and ethics and ancient morality and biblical morality. And even if he doesn't believe it literally, he should try to practice it and see if his life gets better. See if his relationship with Nathan improves. See if his relationship with Dan improves. See if his relationship with Kyla improves. And frankly, see if his relationship with the Live and Learn crew and me improve, right? I don't like criticizing my friend. I don't like admitting that one of my friends has done shitty things and has objectionable moral stances. I don't enjoy any of this. I mean, it's good content, but Steven, in my opinion, is suffering because of his own actions. And I think those around him are suffering because of his actions. And instead of joining, because this is what JStock and Queeman wanted, they wanted me to join them. So Steven has less people who are friends and orbiters. So he'll be even more, socially isolated. And so he'll be even more vulnerable to information and reputation warfare. They wanted me to join them and effectively either participate in invective commentary or A-log him. Whereas for me, I would infinitely rather pictures. Where is it? I would infinitely rather explain to Steven and try to get Steven to understand. Where's my paint? That he's participating in Old Testament morality, but he will be better off in the long term if he studies and practices New Testament morality. It's relatively simple. Oh shit, I was showing you guys all the fucking drawings, but I didn't actually show you. But anyways. Sacred Snow says, didn't he say Doobie was all over JStock's Discord and his only accusation was that he's collaborating with the people who are A-logging, doxing everyone around him? Yeah, so far. APAC Trader says, majority of people in the Dem of the USA no longer support Israel's actions. Nobody's talking about Israel. Shut the fuck up, APAC Traders. You're so fucking annoying, dude. I'm so annoying. Doobie is an unserious person who I just can't stand by. He's brown-nosing as some flavor of liberal, or he's fully masked off as a tanky while claiming to be a socialist. Weird. Don't a lot of lolly artist pedophiles use real photos to trace around? Somebody DM that to me. Somebody DM that to me, that a lot of lolicons are like, wow, I really wish I could engage in this in real life. And a lot of lolicons use references from real life CSAM in order to create their animations, which is fucking repulsive. And if I could find those people and fucking hang them by their toes until their blood fucking gets into their skulls and they burst the fucking blood vessel and stroke out and die, I would. Hasbar says, I believe Destiny is a net bad, so I guess I'm okay with his isolation. I used to believe he had pretty good prescriptions for a lot of stuff. Interesting. AFX says, do you think proof is really needed to think JStalker is a strange guy to avoid? No. Everyone talks shit on the internet, but there are AI filters ruining it on major websites. Okay. Nasty says, okay, Connor, if Destiny can't prove or show any evidence of JStock and Queeman doxing, then what is the entire argument during the Kepler's arc? What? What are you talking about? I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Scrolling. I mentioned before, but Doobie is only reasonable and behaved in your chat. Well, I need evidence then. Chaos Moss 24 says that is all they're doing, and what Destiny wants to make the standard. He is full of shit. I'm old. We just call it CP. Oh, they are totally doxing and encouraging doxing. See, you guys don't even agree. There are people who are passionately saying that Steven is full of shit, and he's using this as a pretext with which to silence his critics. But then there's DGGers and Steven himself who say, like, no, it's a matter of inference and logic, and we genuinely believe that this is where the doxing and harassment is coming from. Conservative liberalism says the doxing war is just a bunch of arsenals standing around in their broken houses trying to play victim. I mean, I agree there. I said as much to JStock yesterday. Sorry, I'm very hungry, so I'm like eating pirate booty right now. And I'm not making a joke. It's called pirate booty. I make all sorts of butt jokes about it all the time. Hosbar says people like Conor are far better and effective at middle ground than Destiny. Yeah, but look at this. I had like 170 live viewers, but now that I'm responding to my chat, instead of going over the drama, I've lost like 20 or 30 people. So if I'm so goddamn effective, how come I'm at stuck at 100 or 200 viewers and Steven's at 10,000? Now, to be fair, he has a decade head start on me. And to be fair, I'm kind of dry and boring compared to, endless sex dramas. But you have to understand, like, you guys like praising my moral virtue or at least my understanding of morals. I appreciate it. But that doesn't necessarily pay bills or get viewership. So how do we pay bills and get viewership? While being moral. Because it seems like the most immoral people are climbing to the top. And I'm not just talking about Destiny in reference to his sex shit. I'm talking about Hassan Piker's obviously a piece of shit. Nick Fuentes, piece of shit. Fucking Vosh, piece of shit. So they're engaged in tergiversation. I don't know how to pronounce that. Guys will have to bounce from the stream to watch Bolsonaro getting fucked in his trial. Have fun, Peter Mars. Have fun. Commentary isn't A-logging? You don't think so? You don't think that they're not constantly documenting all of Steven's sins? Corbin Sale says, hello, all my N-words. Hey, Corbin, good to see you, bud. This is Destiny Talking Point to muddy the water. How? Yo Goon says, I love Trump. Am I safe here? Not really. Just don't be annoying. No, it's from the guy's name, Anthony Legato or something like that, who I believe was notoriously schizo Christian troll. Gotcha. Hosbar says, A-logs typically go too crazy and salivate over even the weakest evidence they have for attacking somebody, but that doesn't mean that the core of their criticism is incorrect. Yeah, nobody said that. By this logic, Destiny and Conor are A-loggers. Nope, I disagree. I disagree. And I'm going to show you how. An A-logger, if I go to Rao Kittenhouse, let me go to Rao Kittenhouse.
The Old Republic. There is some great lore and violence.
Hush. Rao Kittenhouse, who is the publisher of JStock on YouTube. Okay, so we go to the video segment and we got Destiny, 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 Destiny Orbiter, Destiny, Destiny Orbiter, Destiny, Destiny Orbiter. Destiny Orbiter, I guess, but it's not about Destiny in particular. Not Destiny Orbiter. Former Destiny Orbiter, Destiny. Destiny, Destiny again, Destiny. Not Destiny. Destiny, Destiny, Destiny. Oh, me. Destiny. 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 Destiny Orbiter. This is an A-log, bro. This is A-logging. They are documenting every possible bad behavior that Destiny has ever done. Okay? Then, if I go to Destiny's streamers channel, then we got Willie Mack, Brian Tyler Cohen, a debate, Ethan Klein, another debate, John Bolton, Trump, Hassan Piker, Trump, Gavin Newsom, Trump, Tectone, Misfit Patriot debate. Do you see what I'm saying? Where like, yeah, he's critical of people, but 95% of his content isn't a single topic. Now, Queeman, I think, can beat the A-log A-log definition a little bit, but at the same time, probably barely. Destiny, Destiny, different thing besides Destiny, 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 Destiny. This is in reference to the Destiny drama, I think. But still, Hassan Piker, Willie Mack this is because he's attacking them as well. So anyways, the whole point though is that here's Destiny again. And by the way, I don't give a shit. Like A-logging is not some like moral indictment. Okay, I don't give a fuck that Queeman and JStock are mean, but I think that Queeman, compared to JStock, is a better content creator because he, despite like metrics being all over the place, you know, 3K, 3K, 2K, 4K, 2K, 3K, 1K, 3K, 2K, 1K, he still takes, and I applaud Queeman for this. Me and him are beefing in DMs, like we are not getting along, but I applaud him for this. He will take a 1K hit to talk about somebody besides Destiny. He will vary his content in order to just talk about something else. So no, I applaud Queeman's style. I think Queeman's style is infinitely more defensive than JStock style. Anyways. And by the way, you cannot say that about my content. My content is varied, and I suffer algorithmic correlative issues as a result of varying my content all the time. I could be, if I wanted to be, and by the way, I don't want to be, But if I wanted to be Food Shop's Destiny Defense Squad, I could. But I don't want to. I think at some point that just becomes boring. Short says, so wouldn't the Destiny DGG wiki be A-logging by your definition? I don't think so. Are they documenting every bad thing that other people have ever done ever? Is the Wikipedia, so you're saying like Wikipedia is A-logging by my definition. Is the Wikipedia only documenting his bad behavior, or is it documenting his good behavior along with his bad behavior? Yeah. Yeah, it's just a coincidence that Doobie showed up when Raul entered the chat also. Sure. But that's because like, but is it wrong? Is it wrong for people to hang out and talk shit about, is it wrong to hang out with people who are talking shit about a creator? I don't think so. Yo says Destiny is a person who doxed Pisco. I think that's a rumor. I don't think that's true. They were trying to say, if I remember correct, they were trying to say that a Destiny person, like it's either Dan or one of Dan's people, that they are using Kiwi Farm alt to publish doxes for enemies of Destiny. But Destiny said he would have never signed off on that. Not saying that you're doing this, but don't you think that people often point to A-logs as a way of discrediting broader reasonable criticism? Sure. But also, I haven't been swatted. Ryan Kalu says, has Dan doxed Conor? He hasn't doxed me, but he's doxed. He's 100% done doxing. Doctor said, please delete that. I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. This stuff is good. I love this stuff. Doobie seems like he would be the type of person to lie and dox. Also, he does not appear on multiple channels. He might not be a creator, but he exists as a bad faith disruptor. I do not feel bad for him at all. See? DGG. DGG sees it one way. All the Destiny anti-fans see it another way. Chad is not your friend and will not give you good advice consistently. Chad is more like a devil angel conscience sitting on your shoulder and whispering in your ear. So true, bro. But there are people I parasocially love. What is up, my guy? I hope you had a good Labor Day. I did. I had a great one. AF Racing says, damn, I thought we were going to be talking about the chorus shit, not more streamer drama. Chorus is actually politically relevant. We'll talk about that in a moment. I'm catching up. Conor carrying Destiny's dirty water, pathetic. Chaos Most 24. I've seen you comment enough that I'm not going to freak out, but suck a dick. What dirty water am I carrying? Baby Life says, I saw your talk with Queenman. I'm honestly shocked you watch any of his content. He seems like a huge bitch. Well, he's a huge bitch, but he's a funny bitch, right? Yo says, Conor, this is exactly what Couple said about Destiny when he documented her bad behavior while Kiev was swatting her. He vehemently says it was unfair to blame him. Okay, so there's some element of hypocrisy. And how does that change my prescription? It might change my description, where Destiny is saying that behavior that Queeman and JSOC are engaging in is behavior that Steven himself engaged in the past, and therefore this is just his chickens coming home to roost. But I've said as much to Steven. I've said that this is, you know, you can, what was it? He did an analogy, I think, in our conversation. He did an analogy where he was like, if somebody like getting swatted, I don't know if this was an analogy or if this was a direct example, but he was saying like, Nathan hasn't done anything wrong. He has the wrong dad, right? And so his dad's getting swatted. So while you can foresee that Steven getting swatted is going to affect Nathan, does Nathan deserve his swatting? The obvious answer is no. Okay. He doesn't deserve that. Right. And so you can have an element of like hypocrisy, I suppose, where Steven has engaged in A-log behavior before. Therefore, this is just, you know, the shoe being on the other foot. But I don't think that changes my prescription at all. I think my prescription is adopt New Testament morality and go forth and sin no longer. That's unironically my advice. Yeah. Yeah. No. I understand Steven freaking out after getting doxxed. He's not a purely rational actor. He wants revenge.